guys, welcome to my channel once again. My name is Bolaji. Okay, in this video, this video is just gonna be sequel to my previous videos on the how to buy a house series or buying a house series. We've had the Lisa accounts where we spoke about, I've put a link, and we've also had where we spoke about credit scores, building your credit score, having a good credit history. So in this video I'll just be talking to you about the ways to buy. So we assume that you've been able to save money in a Lisa account for at least 1 year. I think I did mention in one of my previous video, when you open a Lisa account, let's say you open it today, you won't be able to use the money to buy a house until a year after. So more like until December next year, you won't be able to use the money to buy a house if you want to. Let's assume that we already saved some money. It's 1 year past. We've also employed other ways to save money, perhaps through gifts, donations, or through ajo. I'm sure Nigerians know what we call ajo. The ajo is more like a group of people come together, and then they must be trusted people. So more like you agree to save or to do £500 every month. So we all donate 500 for the first person. So the person goes home with 2005, and then you take turns January, February, March, April, May, and that will be it. But before you can do that kind of thing, you should bear in mind that, excuse me, I'm drifting from today's from today's topic already, but let me just talk about it since it came to mind. But for you to do that, it has to be from trusted people, because if you are number 5, for example, and then you've given the other 4 people and it's your turn to pack, and then these other people decide that they are not doing it again, there is no law binding them. Am I croaky today? There is no law binding them. So therefore, like, you cannot say you want to call some people to say, this thing happened, and they did not obey their own. They did not abide is the word. They did not abide by their own side of the coin. You get what I mean? So it has to be from trusted people you trust. And also you should bear in mind that when you are doing that kind of thing, it has to be more like you have to have packed your money. I don't know if it packed the money is the word. You have to have been more like be among the first set of people to why is English hurting me today? Maybe because this is not today's topic and it's just a bonus point. Okay, let me just give a real life example now. So let's say that you are planning to apply for a mortgage in June, for example. You should, if you are doing a job, you should have had the money in your own account by March latest, because when you begin to apply for the mortgage, you would be expected to provide your account statements for the past 3 months. And if the statements you are providing has like lump sum of 500 entering consecutively, it is going to raise questions. So you don't want to be applying for a mortgage and have your brokers or the lenders asking you questions you're not ready for. So if you would be doing or going through that route, you should ensure that you have the money in your account long before you apply for the mortgage. So that is it. So long and short, let's say we have the money already now, and we have been building our credit score. Credit score is already beautiful. We have good credit history. So now what's the next thing? Okay, so at that point, you can begin to survey the markets. You can begin to go on websites where you get to know prices of houses around you. And yes, it doesn't even have to be until you have all of those things I mentioned earlier ticked. You don't have to have it all ticked. As you are saving, you can begin to look and see how much do houses in my area even cost if I want to buy a house? More like, what is it usually like? How much are we looking at? So you're not just saving money blindly, when whereas you would have been able to buy, but you're just saving blindly. So you should be have an idea of how much houses in your area costs. So by doing that, we would go on websites like, you've got Zoopla is a website, zoopla.co.uk. You'd get to see houses for sale, houses for rent, how much you're likely to borrow, the interest rates, and all of that. So just have an idea of how much houses cost in your area. But by the time you start familiarizing yourself with those websites, you'll realize that there are varying prices. You'll see that to a large extent, this is the range of prices that you would get. And that is going to take me to the next thing I'll talk about in this video, which is going to be the ways to buy. So there are a couple of ways to buy out, like different schemes available to buy, different schemes. But I should mention here, the money you have saved in your Lisa account can be used for mortgage at all, for any build at all, be it old build or new build. And then for either ones, for old build or new build, you would require a mortgage for the two of them, either one. So for old build, it's pretty straightforward. Old build, as the name sounds, is an house it's a house that has been built before. People have lived in it, but probably they want to move out of the house and then they need to sell it off. So it's an old build. But for those houses, you can use your Lisa account, your money from your Lisa account, as I mentioned earlier. But you can't use some schemes available for those houses. I'll talk about those schemes going forward. So basically, for those type of houses, you expected to have a minimum of 10% deposits, and depending on how long you spent in the UK, depending on your lender, it could be more than that. I've heard of people say that they've approached lenders and lenders have said to them they should have a minimum of 30% deposits, 15% deposits. They've also put a lot of other factors into consideration as well, so we should also bear that in mind. But yeah, for new builds, there are a couple of schemes available. And then for new builds, it's basically like they are just building the house. You'll be the first person to live in the house. It's a brand new house, and everything is just in there. Old builds have got advantages, new builds have got disadvantages as well. So it's a two-way thing. For example, in old builds, it's more like it's a house that people have lived in before. So I mean, everything you would possibly need is in there. And then also for old builds, you realize that they are in locations where it's kind of central, more like you could buy a house close to the town center, the city center, and it's like central to lots of places. But for new builds, on the other hand, you realize that they may not be central to town center, they may not be that close to town center. I should also say that old builds are usually relatively cheaper compared to new builds. New builds are expensive at the time you're buying it, and then they're expensive at the time you're buying it, so it usually takes a couple of years before it appreciates. So it just depends. You weigh what you want. Do you want an old build or do you want a new build? So when you decide what you want, you go for it. It's nobody can help you to choose. Okay, so that's that about old builds and new builds. Then what was I saying now? Okay, so for new builds, there are a couple of schemes available that people use. You could decide to pay, like the old builds, you could decide to pay the deposit required, the minimum of 10% upfront, and you're fine, you're perfect, nothing happen. But there are schemes that the government has put in place to help people get on the property ladder and move into new builds. One of them is the Help to Buy scheme. The Help to Buy scheme is such that you'll have a minimum of 5% deposit, and then the government is going to borrow you 20% equity loan, and you can get the 75% from the bank or anybody willing to lend you the money. So that's that about the Help to Buy scheme. There are pros and there are cons. There are lots of videos on YouTube. You can even go on the gov.uk to see what the advantages of these schemes are, to see if it's something you want to do. Some people would go on to tell you the equity loan. Yes, like I said, it is equity loan. The government is borrowing you the money. But the thing about the equity loan is that in the first 5 years it's interest free. So the government is not asking you to pay the money back. They're not asking you for anything. You can just go on to live in your house, furnish the house. But the thing about the equity loan is from the 6th year it begins to from the 6th year it's no longer interest free. So there is a way it's calculated. I still cannot wrap my head around it for as many times as I've tried to see how much it is, how it is calculated. So but I'll put the calculation somewhere and I'll direct you to the link or somewhere to get it and wrap your head around it as well. So you begin to pay interest on it from the 6th year. And you should bear in mind that for the equity loan, you can return it to the government when you are ready to return it. Some people pay their equity loans back within the first 5 years, and the house becomes all yours. The government doesn't have any equity on the house anymore. And there are a couple of ways to pay it back. You could decide to save the money. You could decide to remortgage. You could decide to, I think those are the two major ways I know. But I know I've heard of people say that it's actually not that difficult to pay the government, but to pay the money back, it's just some determination to avoid paying interest on the money. So it's up to you eventually. And you should also bear in mind that when you are ready to pay the money the government has borrowed you, you should bear in mind that it is with respect to the value of the house at the time you are ready to pay back. So let's say, for instance, you bought a house of £100,000 and you require a 5% deposit, that's 5k, and the government has borrowed you 20k, that's 20% equity loan, and you get the remaining 75% from the bank. When you are ready to return, you may not be returning 20k that the government has borrowed you. You would be returning 20% of the value of the house at the time you are ready to return it. So let's say the house you bought at 100k in 2010, in 2015 your equity loan is beginning to get to the point where it's no longer interest free, and you're like, no, you want to pay it off. The house will be valued in 2015. So when the house is valued in 2015, whatever the value of the house is, you are paying back 20% of that. So let's say the house was valued to be 120k. By the time you are ready to pay back, it's going to be 20% of 120k. That's like you're paying the government 24% back. So it's as simple as that. The advantages is more like it's interest free, it's free money. Yeah, and I would also have that buying a house with the Help to Buy scheme, it gives you it reduces the money you would have to borrow from the bank, and it helps you to increases your chances in getting a lender to borrow you money. So more like, rather than having to save all the way to 30% for some lenders, you just have to save 5%, and the government has given you 20%, and you're just borrowing 75% from the bank. It's actually a scheme. But disadvantages, nothing that has advantages does not have disadvantages. Disadvantage would be such that, what if the house increases in value very much? We need to bear that in mind. What if you think it's gonna be easy to pay back and you're unable to pay back, and a lot of things. But I would say that you never would know until you try, and every day people keep trying and using these schemes, and they are doing okay. Somebody said to me that they paid their equity loan back in 18 months, and I'm like, wow, woo, really? So really, but before you delve into it, ensure you've got enough information to wrap your head around it and all of that. Yeah, so that's that about the Help to Buy scheme. Another scheme you can also use is the part exchange scheme. The part exchange scheme is such that you have a house, you want to buy a new build, and then the developers are willing to take the house, your own house, from you, and then they'll sell that to you. So more like you would now, whatever the value of your house is, and then whatever the value of the new house is, you would be paying the excess on it. So that's literally what the part exchange scheme is about, but that's for second time buyers, and it's not applicable to first time buyers. Another scheme that is the government that is available to buy houses is the shared ownership scheme. The shared ownership scheme is such that this is the house. It's applicable for new builds as well, but you can't afford to buy all at once. It's such that you own a certain percentage of the house, and then the council owns another percentage of the house, or you and a couple of friends or a couple of other people, may not be friends, like more than one person owns the house, and then you own it in different percentages. More like you could own 50%, or and then as time goes on you can buy more equity on the house till, I think I'm mixing it up, I think that's part buy part rent. Now I'm mixing the two of them up. I'll clarify. The shared ownership. So when you begin to look on Zoopla, for example, you would see that sometimes you would come across some houses that are ridiculously cheap, and you're like, why is this house cheap like this? But look further, you would see that for some of those houses, it's usually a shared ownership scheme. So more like they want you to just buy a certain percentage of it, and that is why it is as low as it is compared to all the other houses in your environment. First homes, it's a new scheme. It was recently launched. It's such that the houses, local houses, are made available for you at a discount rate. More like if the value of the house is 100, definitely 100. For with that first homes, you would be, there's a discount of 20%. So what you need to bring is 80%. That 80% covers your deposit and the mortgage. And at the time you are ready to also sell the house, you would also be expected to give that discount to whosoever you are selling the house to. So that's another scheme like that, first homes. Then there is it rent to buy? Yeah, there is rent to buy as well, also available on some new homes, where you rent the house, but you should you would be, you should, there are a couple of criteria. But you're renting the house, but over, let's say, 5 years, you have the intention of buying the house. So that is the rent to buy. Which other one have I got? Long and short, there are many schemes to buy houses, lots of schemes. I would just be concluding this. Really, those are the ways to buy houses, but like I said, this is not an in-depth video of it. It's just to give you an insight of the possible ways to do it. There are lots of videos on YouTube regarding these things, pros and cons and all of that. You could have a look, and you could also go on websites. There are millions of things. All these things I'm saying now, what is this thing about now? What is this thing about now? That was what brought me here. So you can also go on to look and read those things and know what it's like. So basically that's all. And in conclusion, I would say that in addition to saving money, when you're saving money to buy the house or saving money for your deposit, it's also important that you save for other expenses as well, because buying the house is not just about the deposit. There are other expenses that also come alongside. You've got solicitor's fee to deal with. It's usually about 1k pounds and above. You've got furnishings to do as well. You might have to, if it's a new house, you might have to be the one to sort your flooring. You might have to sort your white goods, more like your washing machine, dishwasher, and all of that if you do. And your furnitures are there. You need to, there are loads and loads of expenses. And you might even have to pay your product fee if your mortgage is one that comes with a product fee, and you don't want to add it to the mortgage itself. So it's important that you save other money aside your deposits. And even when you eventually get to move into your new house, you might be surprised that unforeseen expenses shows up, more like you just say that your car insurance just goes up unnecessarily and all of those. So those are things you should also bear in mind when saving money. So just save way beyond your deposits before you launch out to say you want to buy a house. And I would just conclude with this, that it's actually not as difficult as we might think it is. Like I've heard people say that to me over and over again, and I think I've got to realize that as well with increasing my knowledge and getting to know more about the subject matter. It's not as difficult as you think it is, but basically what you need to do at the start is have a good credit score and have your deposit saved, and you realize that every other thing comes by and comes by and comes by. Till I come again in my next video telling you about the house buying series. I remain your darling Omobeejay. Remain in God, and God bless you. Bye.